I wouldn't be surprised if you said, I went to the SAM conference and I was sort of down. It's been an impossible year, and now I feel I can do anything. And if that's your feeling after it, I bet it's because of Paul and Willow. Raise your hand if you've heard Paul and Willow speak before and you know how wonderful they are. Paul and Willow, that's the only introduction I'm going to do because you two don't need any introduction. Top 20 Training is my favorite group. Thank you.
Love you. Oh, thank you.
Round of applause, Paul and Willow.
Good morning. I think I'm a little bit more awake than some of you are. And I think it's because I went back to my room at around 8:15. But that's not when the music stopped last night. Because I'm right above where that band was, and it was bumping till about 10. And then I looked down and I could see some of you noticed there was a free bar. Did you see that? It looked like you saw that. Partner, tell them who we are and how we got started doing this for a gig.
When I went to my room last night, I was thinking about my career, right? And Willow, I've decided there are two parts to it.
Okay.
For 30 years, I worked. I did what you do. I was a school teacher. I was a counselor. I was a principal. I painted hallways in the summertime. I worked for 30 years. And in those days, there was no such thing as virtual. You know, virtual means you're there when you're not there. I was there. I was in the room. I was doing those things. So 30 years of doing that. Work. The last 20 has been play. I mean, think about what you did last night. That was not work. So when you go home and you say to somebody, you were at a work conference, that's a lie. You were at a SAMS conference, and SAMS stands for S-A-M-S. The S stands for celebrate, S-E-L-E-B-R-A-T-E.
The English teacher background
that's right.
Showing now.
Celebrate as Mark spends. Right? Willow, what are your credentials?
Oh, same. I was a high school social studies teacher in the state of Minnesota. Can you hear that, by the way, in our accents coming through pretty strong? So I was a high school social studies teacher. I was a coach. And then at the ripe old age of 24, everything changed for me because this guy and our other business partner decided we should start teaching social and emotional skills in school. 21 years ago, that was still sort of cutting edge. We were told by our principal, go find something good in the world of social and emotional intelligence and bring it back. We'll buy the curriculum and we'll teach it to the kids. Well, we couldn't find anything. And there were certainly things out there, and props to the people who were really trying. But 20 years ago, a lot of the social and emotional stuff for kids was what was popular in business 10 years earlier, and it got kind of watered down for children. And we thought, no, we don't want to do that. So we wrote our own curriculum for kids. The only thing that was supposed to happen is we were supposed to teach it to the kids we had in the high school. That was it. Then we wrote a book. And we did not write a book because we thought someday I'd get to wear pumps on a stage. We really didn't. We wrote a book in case this one thing happens around this time of year in every American school, which is a girl comes in and says something like, Mr. Bernabei, my mom says I have to go to Hawaii. And so you have to do 2 weeks of work for my 10-day trip, which we're taking in February, by the way, because my mom says it's cheaper. Well, of course it's cheaper, because everyone's in school in February, right? So we wrote a book so we could say, you know what, read chapters 15 through 18, aloha, Anastasia. You know, moving right along. But it took off. And so that brings us here today because it turned into professional development for us. So what we do is we travel the country working with people just like you on how to do social and emotional skills better. Not just for students anymore. Now we also work with the adults who work in education. Because if we can be as whole as we possibly can, we have a chance. In a world right now where it doesn't feel like we always have a chance.
So you told them that we're from Minnesota. Do you know what the temperature back home is today?
I can check my phone, but I bet it's, what?
About -4.
Okay. But it was -25.
Yeah, just a day or two ago.
Yeah.
Do you know what the temperature is going to be here today?
74.
then my question is like, why are we not living in Florida?
I know, right? Why are we all, where's Michigan? Where are you? Yeah, why are we not living in Florida? Did anyone watch the news this morning? Did you hear him describe what wind chill was? I thought that was hilarious. We're going to describe what scientifically wind chill is. But it is going to be cold, so we're wearing jackets, we're good to go.
Yeah.
Let's show them what it is that we brought for them.
So when Mark said the theme he wanted us to talk about was, if I knew then what I know now, which really opens up lots of possibilities. So if we'd have known then what we know now, we wouldn't be living in Minnesota. Right?
That's the truth.
But it's so wonderful to be able to come to a SAM's conference. When you go home, what are you going to tell your people? It's this. I went to a 3-day party with Sam, with Mark and his friends. That's what this is. This is a 3-day party because you deserve that. Mark has always wanted to make Sam's conferences the kinds of experiences that doctors have when they go to conferences or lawyers have that they go to conferences. Your job is just as important. Mm-hmm. And so this is to be a celebration of you and the people that are back at your school and in schools all across America.
But you know what educators know how to do too? Not just party. Like last night was a party with the band and whatever. You know what else we also know how to do? We know how to celebrate through knowledge. And we know how to celebrate through group work. And we know, I rode over with an old friend in this room from the airport, and she said, nobody takes the time for principals to come together and to collaborate. And she said she couldn't miss these 3 days for that same reason, because of all of you. So it's not just bumper cars, right? It is also all the great work that's going to happen over the next 48 hours.
So it is a party, but it's a party with a purpose. And Bert suggested it. The party of a purpose is to learn something. And that's one reason, that's the main reason why I love coming to Sam's conferences, to learn something and to hang out with people like you. So for those of you who are at your first Sam's conference, this is what needs to happen in the yesterday, today, and tomorrow, to discover how we can be more effective in making amazing things happen in our school. Because we have to make amazing things happen in our school. And the sole purpose of Sam's is to help you do that, support you in doing that. Willow's going to talk about tee up some language that we use in our work.
Yeah, pretty simply. If you've seen us before, you know these two terms, but who is brand new to the room? Well, welcome! Everyone give them a round of applause. Welcome! It only gets better from this moment on. If last night impressed you, just get ready. Buckle up, campers. This is going to be fun. Here's some language that we use at our company called Top 20 Training. We are basically all about thinking, learning, and communicating skills. Those three things are sort of the subgenres of social and emotional intelligence. How do we think better? How do we learn better? And how do we communicate better? Simply put, I have two different sides of myself. I have a side to myself where I think, learn, and communicate in highly effective ways. You should see me go. Raise your hand if you are sometimes effective with your thinking, learning, and communicating skills. Put your hands up. Your boss is watching. I can't throw you a bigger softball of that. Yeah, sometimes we're wildly effective. In our work, we call that our top 20 side. Say top 20.
Top 20.
Top 20. And sometimes I am. And sometimes I am a complete and utter bottom 80. Say bottom 80. I am completely ineffective in my thinking, my learning, and my communicating skills. And that's not good or bad, friends. That is what it is. Every human being sometimes is effective in the way we operate with our social and emotional intelligence. Sometimes we're ineffective, is what it is. The most effective among us realize that sometimes we are effective and sometimes we are ineffective. And so all of our work is very simple. We invite people. We don't make them. We don't force them. We invite parents and educators and teachers and students and administration to decide what is effective for them and what is ineffective for them. It is not our job of two yahoos from Minnesota to tell you how you're effective and ineffective. That's your own choice. And by the way, that includes where you come from, all the beliefs that you were raised with, the social norms of where you are in the world, which is maybe different than mine or Paul's. That's up for your decision. And then we ask people to do this. Ready? Groundbreaking. Do the things that we each do that are top 20 more, and stop doing the things that we each do that are bottom 80 more. And that's got to lead to more happiness and success for each one of us. Does that make sense to everybody in the room? We're gonna identify ways which each one of us really are top 20s and effective, and also our bottom 80s and ineffective. That's what we do in our work. So we're gonna use that language today, even though we're not gonna focus specifically on those two things.
Yeah, and the problem is, even though as the director of Top 20 training, the problem is I've developed some bottom 80 habits. So I got to change some bottom 80 habits, right? So one of the things we've been pursuing for a long time in our work is trying to understand what's possible. And that's really what we're doing. That's really what you do. What's possible? What's possible, and how do we make it happen? So we now have the answer to question number one. What is possible? We don't know. We don't know what's possible. And as I thought about that, I came up with these two guys that you might be familiar with. Just up the road a piece, 100 and some years ago, they were trying to fly an airplane. And if you would have asked Orville and Wilbur what's possible, here's what they would have said: 12 seconds. That's how long they were in the sky. They would have said 120 feet. That's how far they flew on December 17th, 1903. Less than half a football field. And then they would have said 8 feet. They were 8 feet above the ground. Now, yesterday, Willow and I flew from Minneapolis to here. 3 hours, right? 1,700 miles. And we were 35,000 feet in the sky. There were 150 people on this airplane. And there were experiences like that going on all over this country. There is no way that Orville and Wilbur could have ever possibly imagined that. They didn't know what was possible. But here's what they did know. We gotta provide the conditions that make what's possible possible. Don't know what's possible, but if we provide the conditions that make what's possible possible, incredible, amazing things can happen. So that's what we have discovered. Mark wants us to talk about what do we know now that we wish we had known then. We now know some conditions. We're going to share 4 of them with you. There's more than that. You also have some conditions that you know that if you, those top 20 conditions, if you put those in place, wow, incredible things happen. Schools become better than they've ever been before. Kids learn. Faculty, teachers want to stay in education. That's possible. Right? It's possible to have young teachers wanting to stay in our profession. And the more times they experience people like you, the more likely that's going to happen. So, what are the conditions that are necessary to make what is possible possible? We're going to share a couple of those with you.
Before we do that, we want to just take one time out. And because we were so graciously given the first keynote, it made sense to us that we couldn't just rear right through with what we would usually do. We'd like to share with you some things that we now know that we didn't know before. But we're in a different time than we've ever been. So you have masks on your faces. We had to show a vaccination card to be able to come together. It would be, in my mind, malpractice to start running into something about social and emotional intelligence and not honor where we are right now, which is different than where we've been before. So I'm going to take just a moment to sort of, I hope, set up our piece, but also set up the week for us and talk a little bit about the hope of where we're going from here. So where have we been, where are we now, and where are we going? Like Mark mentioned, I never thought we'd be where we are now. I thought this would be over by now. Raise your hand if you thought this would be over by now. By the way, you have to know how handcuffed Paul and I are by being on a stage, because we like to be out in the crowd with you, but because we need 30 feet to have our masks off, we're gonna try to contain ourselves up here. It's a change from what we would have done if we were here in 2019. So let's talk. March 13th, 2020 was kind of go day in Minnesota. That was the day my kids came home with their Chromebooks. My own children in my house, I have 2 sons. They came home with 2 Chromebooks, and it felt like this was serious, and this was gonna be a while. I swore on March 13th in 2020, this might take 2 weeks. Can you remember when you thought that? I bought extra pasta for my pantry, because dry goods, because I thought this was gonna be 2 weeks. It was not 2 weeks, we know that now. But at the beginning, at that very beginning moment when we thought it was going to be 2 weeks, we had no idea what was going to come next. Now, for some of that, for us, that meant great trauma and compounded stress. And it's been 2 years now of, well, everybody is sort of on a spectrum. Have you noticed that everybody's sort of on a spectrum when it comes to the last 2 years? And let me be clear, the last 2 years also included a new spotlight on centuries-old inequality in our country. The last 2 years has also included complete chaos around us, both socially and politically, and it seems out in the world and everything that we're watching on TV. And in the last 2 years, I've noticed a spectrum of people's effect. Some people have had a very high level of fear and anxiety, where others seem to have less. Some people have, their lives have been so turned upside down logistically, and some people less. By the way, I don't know a teacher or an educator, and that's all of you in the room, that wouldn't say that our work life hasn't been turned upside down and sideways. Some of us have had a great season of loss, and others have not. So I accept that everybody comes to the last 2 years in different places. But again, I don't know anyone, especially anyone who works in education, who would not say, this has completely changed us. And there are some people in the room, and I want to honor this, who would say, this has broken us just a little bit. And that's okay. We're here for that too. So where have we been? For some of us, we thought, again, we can do this, we can do this. When you have to live in the world, we live in the world of self-help. And I never call us that. I never call us motivational speaker. I hate all those terms. But we live in that world. And I watched people over the course of the last 2 years say things like, well, I've got this nice break at home. I better live my best life. I better work on myself. I want to tell you that when I saw that, I thought to myself, no, don't do that. Fine with your sourdough starters, all of you really Martha Stewarty people. Good on you. And I cleaned out a closet or two, okay? But it has been about survival, and survival is different than thriving. Can we thrive while we survive? Certainly. But let's all give ourselves a moment of grace to breathe in what has happened to us. And it has happened to us. We do not enjoy blame. We think blame is kind of a dysfunctional thing. But assessing the responsibility of the situation that is at hand is an appropriate social and emotional thing to do. So I'm going to invite you to think of where we've been, which simply has been, for some of us, very, very difficult. And I'm going to invite you in this moment to take the deepest, lowest lung breath you can. By the way, please don't shoot it out at a neighbor because we're still in a pandemic, but breathe in. And then out. There's a heaviness that we fight. I fight back the heaviness. Look at me. I'm in hot pink. I fight back the heaviness, but there's heaviness. And where we are now is not where I thought we were going to be. And that's okay, because we're still thriving through surviving. We're still trying to put one foot in front of the other. But we would be lying if we didn't tell you that our work across this country and Canada has been filled with educators telling us, I'm done. I'm done. I can't do this anymore. And he will tell you, and I will tell you, I understand. I don't want that for us, because if you guys leave, guess who's left? We can't. We're the last people standing for the education of these kids. We got to stick it out. We want to stick it out. But to say this isn't hard would be lying. Lastly, where are we going from here? Paul kind of said it. We don't know. The one thing we found out in the last 2 years is we do not know what's coming next. We have no idea what the news will bring tomorrow, is what it is. But here's what I believe will help us be better at it. Intentionality. Being intentional. At least coming up with, we're here. We call this a holy jumping off point. And we don't mean holy by religious, by the way. We mean sacred. This is the moment where we each get to decide, how do I want it to look? It might not look like that. We all know that. But if we have intentional plans going in, I think we have a chance. I also believe that if people who are smart and who are knowledgeable and who are in the know, which are the people who I've met through these SAMS conferences, we have a chance at surviving and thriving for whatever comes next.
And one of the reasons for that is because we have all learned some things already that we would do now that we wouldn't have done then. Raise your hand if you're getting our Wellness Wednesday. Anybody here reading our Wellness Wednesdays? Okay. The intention of that was to do that for 4 weeks. We wanted to send something out to the people on our mailing list to kind of support them. And so we started in March of 2020. It's now been 2 years. So again, we didn't know what was possible, what was going to happen. So here's one, we're going to share with you four. Four kind of cornerstones, there's more than this, but 4 things that wish we would have known then. Now, then doesn't mean before COVID started. Then means when I was a young teacher. When we started whatever it is that you're doing now. If we would have only known then. And one of them is the importance of our thinking. I wish I would have known how critical it is what goes on between my ears, how my thoughts impact the quality of my life and my relationships and my experiences. Didn't know that then. Do know it now. Willow's going to share with you a little bit about this, and then we'll...
So if you've seen us ever work before, how many of you have been here for a while? Like, how many people have come to one other SAMS? Okay. How many of you, only one other SAMS? How about only 4 other SAMs? How about only 9 other SAMs? Mark, you just keep your hand up the whole time. Carol in the back. I think, we were trying to ask around the table last night. I think we're at 7 or 8 SAMs, somewhere in that level. So if you had ever seen us do our first keynotes almost a decade ago, you would have seen us talk about this next model. It is the foundation of the work that we do, because Paul and I are under the belief that if you want to talk about social and emotional intelligence, you got to start with this thing called your thinking. Now, I was raised, I'm 45 years old. Anyone else around my age, 1976 bicentennial? Are you? Are you? We look good. No, go home and look at a picture of your grandfather and your grandmother. They did not look like this at 45. I am telling you, we are rocking it. I can't remember where I am. All of a sudden, I'm thinking about how good they look.
You're looking good. You're looking good.
Thanks. So, what am I going to talk about? For real, why did I mention how good looking we are?
How about our thinking?
Oh, yeah.
Made my point, didn't I?
I know. I was thinking about my hair, not about my brain. Yeah. So, hey, friend in the front. Oh, it's you! What are the chances? All night long last night, she kept saying, "Don't you be pulling me out in that breakout." And now it's you, friend. What is your first name? What's the name you like to go by? Monique. Monique, when I was in my 20s, young 20s, I would come home from teaching, and the first thing I would turn on is Oprah Winfrey. How many of you spent your afternoons with Oprah? I can't get enough of Oprah to this day. And I think she was the first person who ever showed me anything about social and emotional intelligence. However, in the 90s and even in the 2000s, we focused an awful lot on feelings. And by the way, feelings are important and they're valid, and we need to talk about our emotions, very important. But there's this thing behind our feelings called our thinking, and I had never had an adult talk to me about whether my thinking was working or my thinking wasn't working. So we all have this thing called thinking. It actually lives in this very scientific place inside our body called our thinker. Point to your thinker, FYI, it's right here. Right up here, right? Now here's what we know. Sometimes our thinking works, and sometimes our thinking is fairly broken. And both two things are true for every human. We use this language in our business. When our thinking is working, we are above the line. Say above the line.
Above the line.
Yes, that means our thinking is healthy and it's positive and it's serving our best interests. Sometimes our thinking is below the line. Say below the line. No, say it like you are below the line. Okay, that was almost the exact same tone. Now I know that about you. When we are below the line, our thinking is broken. It's not serving our best interests. For me, it tends to be negative, unhealthy. is what it is. All human beings fall on that thinking model. Again, thinking, not feeling, at all times. Can you be a little bit above that line, way above, little bit below, way below? Absolutely, but this is happening for us at all times. Now, when I'm living out my top 20 life, I know that. And I know when I'm above the line, but more importantly, I know when I'm below the line. And when I'm below the line, I can choose to negotiate through my day differently to avoid some of those really icky consequences we end up with. Have you ever had a discussion with a parent? Now, some parents are just so lovely, right? Because you're America's heroes. I bet some of them tell you that. Some of them do not tell you you are a hero. Some of them come in and say, I went to school, so I know how to do this. I'm going to tell you how to do your job. Paul never tells the airline pilot how to fly, and we've been on a lot of flights. But teachers are constantly, administrators are constantly being told by parents, well, I know what to do. You should do it this way. Have you ever had an experience with a parent? Now, go back into your imagination station and think this to yourself. Have you ever had an experience with a parent where they were a little upset, and you said and acted in a way that you were so proud of? You didn't tell them that, right? But they walked out of the room, you shut the door, and you were like, boom, did it. I said what I wanted to say, they heard it the way I wanted to say it, this has worked out great. I would say that your thinking was probably serving your best interest in that moment. Boom, boom, boom. Have you also had a parent come in where you completely lost your mind? Yes or no? Well, you don't have to say that publicly, I guess, professionally. Yes, you have. And when they left, commonly what we think to ourselves is this. Help me fill in this sentence. What was I? Real loud. What was I? Thinking. You probably either weren't, or your thinking was slightly broken at the moment. You just didn't know that. Again, highly successful people know where they are on the line, make different choices when they're below. What I wish I would have known then, especially as a younger educator, which I know now, is that I'm in control of my inner life. That this is more up to me than I ever gave myself credit for. I pretty much, through my 20s and before, allowed whatever was happening in the outside world to determine whether I was above the line or below the line that day. And then I learned this bit. It's called invitations. Invitations is, you know what an invitation is, right? Imagine you're in 5th grade and you get an invitation to a birthday party. Did that ever happen for you? I hope so. In 5th grade, you got it, right? It's a card, right, that comes in an envelope, and then you open it up and it says you're invited to and it's going to say for whom and where and when and what time. What is on the bottom of all good invitations? 4 letters. Very good. And that is French for Respondez s'il vous plaît. Yes, tell us if you're coming or not. Does everybody understand what an invitation is? Now I'm going to switch it up. By the way, thanks for saying RSVP. I can't tell you how many groups say BYOB. And I think that means you had a different 5th grade experience than I did, but I'm good to go. That's fine. So, I'm going to turn that little metaphor into something for our work. This is called the line. Please say line. Above the, below the. You're all experts. Most days of my life, I wake up right in this area, right in this zone. Not way up here, although I do on my birthday every year. August 13th. I love my birthday. And friends, I've had times where I've wanted to put a sheet over my head in bed and go back to bed and not wake up. I've had both. But most days, right in here. And I walk through my day like this. Just like that. Sometimes I go way above the line, really in the zone. But sometimes, here's what happens to me. Bam! Something comes up in my day, and I go below the line. Bam! I get in the wrong traffic line, which, by the way, in southern Florida, there is no right traffic line. This is where all the Midwesterners come to retire in traffic. This is what's happening. Drive to Naples, it'll take you 4.5 hours, it's 12 miles away. Bam! I'm in the wrong line at Target. Bam! That guy looked at me funny. Bam! My kids won't put on their socks and shoes on the way out the door. Bam, bam, bam. These things kind of come up. Now, there's also bigger things that come up that invite us to go below the line, but think about how many regular run-of-the-mill things come up. How many of you are having educators complain about coverage right now? We're not talking about the playoffs, friends. This is that they need subs and the other people have, raise your hand if coverage is a problem in your building. I bet there are teachers in your building right now who are having coverage issues and they've gone below the line. What are some other things? Raise your hand and I'm going to call on you. What's some other things that happen in schools where people go? Student behavior? Yes. Bam. Give me another one. No masks on. Bam. What else? And we have lost our mind up in here, right? You gotta like it. I mean, I see a nod. It's taken me 15 minutes to get you to nod. By the way, friend, will you share with the group what your first name is? Yes. Who do you think I'm talking to? Him? No. What's your first name? I got old ears. Steve? Steve, I'm going to share with you what my biggest one was as a social studies teacher. I would walk into a social studies room when I was 23, 24, 28, and I always wanted to bring it. Can you tell that I like to formulate energy? The reason is because I believe if you're going to be an engaging teacher, you have to actually engage students. It's groundbreaking. Now, you don't have to be JoJo the crazy clown like I am, but every educator needs to be authentically engaging in what they're doing. So I would walk in, Steve, and I always showed up sort of like a female Mrs. Doubtfire. Do you know what I mean by that? Like, hello! Are you ready for some learning? I mean, I was so big that my colleagues would be like, yeah, the energy. You are faking that sometimes, right? And I would be like, yeah, because I'm at work. I don't get to bring my couch personality to work. So Steve, I would come in with all this energy, and then commonly I would have in my class what I would call a slouching sophomore. Is anyone familiar with this breed? Steve, is there a possibility you've ever been a slouching sophomore? I know how to pick them, friend. Would you be willing to enact like a bit of a dramatization with me for a second? And by the way, all you have to do is what you're already doing. So there's not a lot of stretch, but a little bit. Can you get down a little bit? What's as far as, hey, I like a man who knows his back limitations. Me too. Okay, here we go, Steve. And by the way, I'm going to act out, this is one of my BAMs as a teacher. Are you ready, Steve? Okay, Steve, buckle up. By the way, this teacher face gets mean looking. It's just acting, okay? If I'm really going to get into character, what I need from everybody in the room is for you each to holler out 1, 2, 3, action. And I'm not kidding. Even if you're too cool for school for this, you're going to do it. And I'm going to tell you why. It's because it's fun for me, okay? You're all going to go, and I'm going to show you what would happen where I would go below the line. Get your fingers up. John, which one? Good. Everybody ready? 1, 2, 3, action! Hello! Are you ready for some learning? Steve, this is the 4th time this week. You got to sit up. Steve, sit up. Yeah. And Steve, do it with me. Steve. Steve. One more time, Steve. Steve. Steve just did what most adult men do when I yell at them, which is anything I ask. However, that is not what sophomores in high school do, Steve. You would never have popped up that fast. You would have gone like this.
What? I learn better this way. I'm a horizontal learner.
And then it's you and it's me, and we're going to the principal's office, right? And I'm dumping you in there, and I'm going to say these famous words of a teacher. I've been disrespected for the last time. To which I always want to go, you want to bet? Because if you're coming back for health insurance tomorrow, I think it's going to happen. Because I see your behavior as disrespectful. So I go below the, and then what happens? He goes to the principal's office. I sit down with my lunch table, and I verbally vomit all over them. You guys know Steve? What a load. Bleh. Because I am below the, then I go home. And my husband's only sin is walking in my path. Then I let him have it. It's called spray and pray. Just say anything I want and pray he forgives me afterward. And that could go on for 3 hours. And it's always about like toilet paper roll placement. It's nothing big. But after 3 hours, I'll go, what happened? Third period happened. I went below the line and I never came back up. Now here's what I wish I would have known then that I know now. I don't know a lot for sure, but I know this for sure. I am so sick and tired of bringing home the worst version of me to the people I'm supposed to love most and giving the best version of me to other people. I'm done. I'm done. Oh, say that again. I don't have time. Friends, it's called burnout. And the biggest burnout, we don't need to worry about professional burnout, although we do. We need to worry about human burnout. Burnout at home looks different than burnout at work. If you are any good at what you are doing, I hope you stay. We need you so badly. But you could go do something and be more as effective somewhere else. You can't get rid of the people who are in your house, and that's where breaking is happening right as we speak. So here's what I wish I knew then, which I know, with what I now know. He doesn't make me go below the line. It's a choice. Say choice. He's an invitation. What he's saying to me is this.
Hey, Miss Sweeney, want to go to the below the line party?
He's asking. And what does RSVP stand for in French? It means you don't got to go if you don't want to. Nobody is making you go below the line. It's a choice. Say choice. That's for the regular pet peeve stuff. There is definitely a scale of invitation. If 1 to 10, if 10 is the most terrible human things that can happen to somebody, and they're happening all around us, that's a 10. If that's a 10, a 1 is like a booger. Can you say booger professionally? Some people think it's funny, but it's really snot. You know what I'm talking about, right? Think about how many perfectly good days were given away for 1s and 2s and 3s, and he sat funny. Last thing, and then Paul's gonna move on. Every time I do this with a group of educators, I say, how do I see the slouching boy? Every educator says this to me. He's disrespecting me. Every time I do this presentation in the corporate world, I say, how do I see his behavior? All the corporate leaders say, he's lazy, he's disengaged, he's tired. They put the onus of the behavior on whom? Steve. No offense, Steve, you're great. You're just in the hot seat. The most dysfunctional thing I ever did as an educator was equated children's behavior to my own self-worth. That is what I wish I would have known then that I know now. That, by the way, when I do that, I give the 45-year-old inner life, big deal, away to whom? The sitting style of a 15-year-old boy. Please become aware, as I'm trying to remind myself to do on a day-to-day basis, how much I'm allowing others and situations to do that to me, to make me lose my mind. Steve, up in here, up in here. We want to pay attention to when we're allowing that to happen in our lives. That's what I wish I would have known that I now know.
So you're going to spend some time below the line. Why? Because you're a human being. The issue is this: we don't want to live there. And there are a lot of people living below the line. So would you just take 1 minute at your table and share with your friends some conditions that come up in your life, some invitations. What are the invitations that come up in your life that invite you to go below the line? Okay, 1 minute, go ahead. So number one, being aware of our thinking is one of the conditions that's necessary to make what's possible possible. If we're not aware of what's going on up here, it's not going to happen. Right? A second one, I wish I had known the secret about confusion. What Willow just talked about applies to your work with your adults in the workplace, but also the kids. This one's going to have a little bit more to do with your students. I wish I would have known the secret about confusion. So I'm going to ask you, think about kids in your school today, and something's being taught, math class, whatever, and this kid is confused. This kid doesn't get it. Where does that student go? Where does he or she go in terms of thoughts about himself, feelings, beliefs? A kid that's confused in your school, where do they go? What do they think? What do they believe? Share some things with me. Silent. Thanks, John. Their phone, yes, yes. So they disengage in the lesson and they go to their phone. Yes, what else? What do they leave?
Yeah.
Okay, yep. Certainly mentally they leave.
Well, some leave physically and some stay seated.
Yeah.
Right?
What else? Feelings. Feelings they have. Yes. Lost, yes. Inadequate, exactly.
Anger.
Anger. All right, now think about that. Now, what's the possibility in your school today of a kid being confused? It's supposed to happen. So we have an experience the kids are having in our school, like almost every day, some of them, that's resulting in them going to this dark place. Dark place, right? Can I get my, there we go. Self-doubt, stupid, I feel stupid, I'm dumb, not smart enough, all that kind of stuff, right? So I met this young girl in Denver, Colorado. We were talking about confusion. I said, what's it like for you? She said, I'm confused in school and I don't know the answer. I pretend, blush, and don't raise my hand as much. You begin to see her disengaging. Confusion results in student disengagement. I didn't know that. And guess what I was teaching? Shakespeare. Think my students were confused? Mr. Bernabei, Shakespeare doesn't even speak English, they would tell me, right? Right? So that girl in Denver and the kids that you're thinking about right now do not know the principle. And I don't mean the person who's leading the school. I don't mean you, the PAL, but the PLE, the principle. The big idea. Here's the principle. Everything you know or can do today, you were once confused about. John, can I pick on you, my friend? Yeah. All right. You're wearing no. You're confused, yes. John, you're wearing shoes that tie. Did you tie those shoes? Yes. Was there ever a time when little John was confused about tying shoes? Yes. All right. You're wearing a shirt. Did you button that shirt, John? I did not need help today. You didn't? Was there ever a time when you were confused, John, about buttoning a shirt? How about making a tie? Tying a tie? Yes. Riding a bicycle? Yes. Multiplying numbers? Yes. There is nothing that John Antonetti can do today that he was not once confused about. Mm-hmm. That's the principle. I never told my kids that. I let them continue to believe that if you're confused, you're stupid. Right? If you're confused, you're dumb. If you're confused, you're not good enough. Because, by the way, look at the rest of the kids. They get it. And you don't. I wish I'd have known the secret about confusion. So here's the secret. The secret is confusion is a natural and necessary part of all learning. Say that with me.
Confusion is a natural and necessary part of all learning.
Please, on Monday, share the secret with your students. You don't need approval from anybody to do that. You don't have to add anything to the budget. Please, as soon as you possibly can, let kids know the principle about confusion and the secret about confusion. Now, they are not going to believe the secret unless they understand the mountain of learning. So here's the mountain of learning. We begin at the bottom where we don't get it. Little John didn't know. Young John didn't know those kinds of things. Didn't know how to do those kinds of things. But he wants to climb the mountain to get to the top where he has the aha about tying shoes and riding bicycles. So we're going to do a little role play here. Willow's going to be my student in Spanish class. Right? So Willow is a freshman in my Spanish class. Good kid. She comes to class every day. And she wants to get the Spanish aha. She wants to learn how to speak it, write it, understand it, okay? So Willow, you start climbing the mountain.
Yeah, but right now, I don't get it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't get Spanish.
So Willow just arrived in the valley of confusion.
I don't know how to speak Spanish.
Right.
I'll go to class.
Yeah.
And I'll do some homework. And I'll try.
But she gets to the valley of confusion. What's it like in Spanish class when you're confused?
Well, like, I kind of don't get it. And why are some of the words feminine and some of the words masculine? Like, how is a boat a girl?
Yeah.
You know what? I feel confused, and it makes me feel super stupid. So I don't want to do this anymore.
And if it was totally up to you, totally, what would you do?
I think that I'm not going to take Spanish anymore because there's probably no value in learning a second language anyway.
So Willow
You
goes...
should be laughing. There's total value in learning a second language.
So Willow gets to the Valley of Confusion, turns around, and goes back down the mountain. I want you to raise your hand if you can think of anything in your life where you had this experience. You wanted to get it, you start climbing, you got confused, and you felt kind of like Willow did, and you went down the mountain. Raise your hand if you've had anything in your life that's like that.
Knitting is
For
so
me,
stupid.
it's automobile mechanics, all right? Now, here's the deal. Here's my grandson, Charlie. Charlie's now a sixth grader, so this is not him currently, but he woke up one morning lying on his back because that's all he could do as this little boy. He saw his older brother Joe running around the house throwing balls through hoops, and Charlie had this thought, I'd like to be able to do that, but I don't even know how to roll over yet. So Charlie wanted to get the roll over aha. He started climbing up roll over mountain. He got to the Valley of Confusion. He tried to dip this shoulder, get this other one over the top, and he couldn't quite do it. Now his mother, my daughter Katie, was with him. You think she said this? Charlie, you're a loser. Or how about, Charlie, your brother can do this, why can't you? I can promise you my daughter did none of those things. In fact, she smiled. She encouraged. She even helped Charlie roll over. But both of them still knew it wasn't him. Until about 3 months later, when Charlie got the roll over aha. Now, here's the difference. Why when Charlie gets to the Valley of Confusion, does he keep going up the mountain? And when Willow, my Spanish student, gets confused, she goes down the mountain. My friends, the answer to that question is this. Willow has equated confusion with dumb or stupid. Charlie hasn't. And my job as Charlie's grandfather is to make sure he never equates confusion with being dumb or stupid. And when he comes to your school, your job is to make sure that Charlie never equates confusion with dumb or stupid. And if you do that, Charlie will be confused in your school every day. But he'll do what? Raise his hand, ask questions, do his homework, get help, and he'll keep climbing the mountain, all right? So the secret students will not believe the secret unless they know the mountain of learning and unless confusion rocks. Confusion in your school has to rock, which means what? You have to celebrate it. With a C, all right? Not an S. Celebrate confusion. And I'm going to define that to mean that kids, when they are confused in your school, need to experience a positive emotion connected to that experience. Because right now, they're experiencing a negative emotion connected to that experience. And that negative emotion, when it is experienced day after day after day, has mental health implications for that kid, right? So here's one way we've shared with teachers. It's the 1, 2, 3 clap. I'm going to yell 1, 2, 3 if you would all clap in unison one time. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Done.
Willow, you've got a question. I love Willow when you're in Spanish class and you have a question about something. Hey, class, Willow's confused about IR Spanish verbs. Way to go, Willow. Hey, class, 1, 2, 3. Maybe that's how we do it. Or maybe as an administrator, you put a sign up in front of your school building that says, come to our school where you will be confused. Now, there are principals in this country who are now doing that. Because it's one of the few reasons why a kid should come to school in the morning. Yes, they want to hang out with their friends. But it's also because they're confused, right? If you go to St. John's School in Imperial, Missouri, just south of St. Louis, you walk into the building, that's what you will see. Confusion on a pedestal. I was in front of that building one day. Kids were coming off the buses. I didn't know I had worked with the faculty, but I didn't know any of these kids. Little second grader walking. I said, why are you coming to school today? She said, I'm confused about reading. I said, cool, that's what we do here. Come on in. Next kid, about a 4th grade boy, why are you coming to school today? I'm confused about fractions. Cool, that's what we do here. Come on in. Every kid going to this school every day knows they're going to school because they are confused. And no kid going down the mountain. Not a cent had to be added to the budget of that school to make that happen. Okay, so what are meaningful ways you can celebrate confusion with your students? Let me give you 2 minutes at your table and yak about that. See if you can come up with some meaningful ways. Now, if you're going to do that differently if you're working with kindergartners than if you're working with high school sophomores. but talk about meaningful ways you can celebrate confusion with your kids. Go ahead. Okay, gang, let me bring you back. That's not enough time, but that's an assignment for you and your faculty when you get back to school. How can we celebrate confusion in our school? So I want to stay with this for another minute. I want you to think of this kid in a school in your town, not your school, another school. Let's say he's a 4th grade boy, and he's in math class, and he's confused. Here's what's going on in this kid's head. I don't get this. I'm confused. This is stupid. I'm stupid. I'm done. Now, what does that kid do? He starts doodling on his paper. He starts pulling the hair of the girl in front of him. He checks out. Right? Now, down the block is your school. We call that a top 20 school where essentials are being taught. And this kid is in your building. Same age as the kid, first kid. Same class, math class. This kid's confused. And here's what he's thinking. I'm confused. My teacher told us the secret about confusion. We even celebrate it because it's a natural and necessary part of all learning. What does this kid do? Raise his hand. Now, I want you to picture those two kids, not just one day, because it's not just one day. It's day after day after day. And we're going to take a brain scan of those two boys. And this is why knowing the secret about confusion is essential, and why I wish I would have known it when I was teaching Shakespeare. Here's a brain scan of the boy on the left. This is what's going on in his brain day after day after day. This is what's developing in his brain, all right? In case you can't see those, anxiety, stress, phobia, panic, depression, shame, day after day after day. What's going on in the boy's brain in your school? My friends, this one issue alone is a mental health issue. If the education god said, Mr. Bernabei, you can do one thing in every school in America. There are a lot of things I'd like to do in every school in America. If I got one choice, that's it. Every kid's going to know that confusion rocks. Because you don't have to add a penny to your budget to pull. You can do this in a half hour or shorter. Right? So the health of our young people, I think, is impacted by their beliefs. And one of those is whether they have intelligence or not. And a lot of kids in our schools don't even know something that is true about every kid in your school, that they have intelligence. So if you want to create a culture of learning in your school, and we do, right? We do, then students need to know the secret about confusion. Knowing that secret is one of the conditions that's necessary to make what's possible possible. Watch the amazing. Kids come to school confused and they're all over it. Yes, I'm confused today. It doesn't scare them. Something we can do. Right? Willow, I wish I'd have known we could also keep our day.
Yeah. When I was 29 years old, I had an aha Oprah moment. Aha, by the way, means I never saw this the way that I'm seeing it in just this moment. How did I get to be this age without knowing such a thing? I was in the middle of a traffic jam. I was stopped. There were thousands of cars around me. It was the year I decided to marry my husband, who lives 70 miles outside of St. Paul, Minnesota, where I was teaching. So every single morning I would get up at 5:30. I would get in my car. I would drive 72 miles into the high school where I was teaching, be in my room by 7:30, and then teach all day and then drive out another 72 miles. If you know anything about Minneapolis and the Twin Cities, to get from St. Paul to where I lived, I had to go through both. Talk about coverage. Made it there every day by 7:30 a.m. Every single day what would happen was the same. I would have a very smooth ride in. I was actually pregnant the year I was doing this as well. Fun fact about me, when I'm pregnant, I gain an unbelievable amount of weight. Actually, it's not unbelievable because I did it, so I believe it. But I gain 80 pounds every time that I have a child. If you've never gained 80 pounds quickly, I would suggest affixing a 7th grader to the front of you and walking around for a while, because that's exactly what it feels like. I have a condition that makes me gain more weight than other people while pregnant. It's called sausage McMuffins with egg. Like a football coach in August, I was pulling 2-a-days. I would eat 2 of those on my way in. And I'd be great until I hit the same bottleneck every day. And every day I'd be polite and I'd get behind a whole group of cars and I'd wait in line. And every single day, some yahoo, probably from Illinois, would come screaming up on the right-hand side. And what would they do at the very end? They'd cut me off. And every day I would feel myself going farther and farther below that, which is great, because what did I have to go do for a living? Teach! So I was starting every day in this very deficit place of not, like my thinking was crazy. And one day I had an aha moment. Say aha. Okay, I had 3 very random thoughts, as ahas usually are. So I'm gonna say all 3 to you, but then I'm gonna braid them back together so you know why it was life-changing for me. By the way, the first thought is very morbid, so stick with me, because it picks up right after that. So I look around the thousands of people in all of their automobiles, and I'm looking them in the eyes, and I'm thinking to myself this: we're all gonna die. Not like right now, I mean just like someday, but that's the morbid part. Let me put it another way. I looked at everybody in the crowd and I thought this: everybody in this room, everybody in that traffic jam, they all had what I call a first day. Say first day. My first day on this universe, on this planet, was August 13th, 1976. It's the first time I opened my eyes and went, I'm here! Now, somebody over there from the 1976 crowd, sir, I was gonna say with the lanyard, but that doesn't really, yes, you friend. How did you know when I just said, doo-doo, doo-doo? What's your first, or the name you like to go by? By the way, I learned that. I used to ask for everybody's first name. Like, what's your first name? John. What's your first name? I learned in certain places in the South, they're not comfortable with anyone at school knowing their first name. Is that true anywhere that you all live? I found this out, and I think it has a military background, so I've learned, I've adapted just to call people what they'd like to be called. What would you like to be called, friend? Are you sure? Okay. Just want to double check. Mitch, what is your birth date? Okay, you don't have to share the year if you're not comfortable. November 19th was your first day of that year on the planet. November 20th was your second. November 3rd, November 21st, November 22nd. Am I on it? I think I'm on it. So you had a 4th day in the universe. And Mitch has had a 400th day, and so have I, and I've had a 4,000th day, and so have all of you, and the reason I know that is you're still here. By the way, not everybody gets a 400th day, but you did, and I did. And we're here. And I thought about it that way. And then the morbid thought that I did have was this next part. So if I was born on August 13th, August 14th, August 15th, I am now on today X number of days. And I don't know what that is for me. Mine's probably higher than some of you younger people, and some of you have more days than I. You could probably Google it, but I'm on X day. Raise your hand if you had a first day. Raise your hand if you have had every day since, and raise your hand if you're now on your X day, yes? And you know what that number is, and that's your business, okay? But it turns out my life so far has been a consecutive list of days. That's it. The morbid thought I have was, there will be a last day. And in that moment, I went, and you think I would have curled up in a fetal position in the bottom of my Buick Rendezvous, but I didn't. Buick Rendezvous is not a sexy car, but it gets you where you need to go. I didn't. My brain went to social studies, this thing I've been spending my whole life learning about, specifically economics. Do you remember supply and demand from way back when you went to school? There is a theory within supply and demand that says this. It's called the scarcity complex. If you don't know how many of one thing you have, what happens to the worth or value of that item? It goes up, and sometimes it skyrockets. If you're anywhere close to my age, you'll remember the fad of Cabbage Patch dolls. That was a 1999 item that my mom bought from the Czechoslovakian hardware store for $52. It wasn't Czechoslovakian hardware, there's the family. But you know what I'm saying, right? The uptick happened because they didn't know how many they were gonna have before the winter solstice holiday. So, all of a sudden I thought, the same thing is true about these days. Each of us have this limited amount of days in our life, which means what happened in my mind for the value and worth of each day that we are given, it went up. And for me, it skyrocketed. because I can't tell you how many perfectly good days I've given away because of how he's sitting, or because my kids don't put on their socks and shoes at the same time. Or she looked at me funny. I have given away and gone below the for a bunch of 1, 2s, and 3s. And I have done that too much in my life. So my aha moment was, each one of these days is far more valuable. You will never, ever hear me say this.
Another Monday. I got a case of the Monday.
I won't say it because for me, well, first of all, if we get rid of Mondays, Tuesdays are now bad. Does everybody understand that? If you have a job, you have to like go back at some point. And if your schedule is Monday through Friday, you like weekends better than you like Mondays. Duh. Stop wearing I hate Mondays shirts. Your shirt should say I have skin. Oh, do you? That doesn't make you special. We all hate Mondays. But they're one of these very precious days. So in that moment in the traffic jam, I decided this. I don't like when I have a slouching student in my class. I don't like when I'm in traffic. But you know what? I'm not going to give away my day for this. I'm going to keep my day. Say keep your day. Say keep your day. No, you don't get it. My teachers come in and complain. Oh, no, I understand, and you're going to have to deal with that, and you don't have to be happy about it, but we don't want to give away our day. We want to keep our day. Say keep your day. Today is January 28th, 2022. How many of those do you get? It's not a trick question, friends. It's one time around the sun. All day long, the universe will send you what it sends all adult humans, things that we don't like. We want to just take more control to say, you know what, I don't like that, I'm going to handle it, but I'm not going to go below the line for it. I'm going to stay above the line, I'm going to keep my day. Say keep your day. Keep your day is easy with traffic. It's easy with target lines. It's easy with she looked at me funny. But when the stuff really hits the fan, that's when this becomes more difficult. And the stuff has really hit the fan for lots of us in the last 2 years. Many of you in the room are dear and close friends to me, so this isn't big news. I'm also very transparent with the people that I work with, so I'll let you know 2020 was a dumpster fire of a year, agreed. But my 2019 wasn't all that hot. Both my mom and my husband were diagnosed with very severe forms of cancer within 2 months of each other. I spent more time in a chemo ward in 2019 than I could even share with you. By the way, you know who was ready for quarantine? I was! I had masks, I had gloves, I had bleach wipes. COVID had nothing on me. I was raring to go. I have a smile on my face, but I can share with you that 2019 was very breaking for me. And I did not have the ability in many moments, because sometimes life offers you things that are so hard that they will take you out at the knees, and I'm not sure that's not the point of those things in our lives. I don't know yet. But when it happens, that's okay too. I did not walk around when I found out that my husband had cancer and said, keep your day. I mean, I have buttons and a book, and I didn't. Because in that moment, I was just trying to survive. But I'll tell you this. When I sat next to my husband in a chemo ward, have any of you ever seen that? Maybe some of you have had it, I'm sure. But it's just an IV for him, or actually it went into his chest. And we sat for 3 days. And he would have toxins and poisons put into his body all day for 3 days. He would get very violently ill. He no longer resembled my husband to me. And you know what I complained about when I was in that chemo bay every time with him? Nothing. Because I was literally with a man who didn't know how many days he had left. Friends, none of us know how many days we have left. What are we doing? There are some big ticket items happening in our lives. Should we go below the line for those? I think it's appropriate. And then we need to climb our way back out as slow and as possible as we can. But we have to, right this second, stop giving away perfectly good days for things that are silly or things that are completely out of our control. Can I get one like okay? No, there is tragedy in the world, but it is not called Mondays. I will bet all the money in my pocket against all the money in your pocket that there is somebody in your neighborhood right now who would do anything to have one more Monday with a loved one. Let us look at each day, not in a bumper sticker way that each day is a gift, but in a real logical way that if I can control my inside under most non-traumatic situations, then I can choose to enjoy and cherish every day as if it has as much worth and value as it does. I don't like throwing out stories and not finishing them. I am pleased to tell you that we are on a 3-year test of no disease with my husband. Thank you. We have the kind of cancer he has is really slippery and scary, so we have 7 years to go before he'll be in remission, but we can't get to 10 if we don't get to 3. So we are walking this journey together. So thank you for listening to that story, and please, all day long, keep your day. Say it with me. Keep your... Man, do I wish I would have learned that at 11. I can't imagine the difference my life would be if I didn't learn that in my late 20s instead of early. Oh, I wish I would have learned it earlier. I love you. Can you imagine that this guy thought it was a good idea to start a company with me when I was 24 years old? I didn't look this good at 24.
No, you were fabulous.
No.
You were fabulous. Good. So the fourth thing that we wish we would have known at 24, or even later than that, is the power of alignment. Wish I'd have known the power of alignment. So let me introduce you to this. This is a way you can think about a person. You can think about a person, you think about a group, your faculty, you can think about a nation, all right? I'm going to use my granddaughter Maggie as an example. Maggie is now a freshman in high school, so this picture goes back a few years. But that red circle on the screen represents Maggie's core. This is the essence of who this little girl is, all right? 3 aspects of her core. Number 1, her identity. Maggie is a unique human being. There are other kids on the planet called Maggie. She's not them. She's got 2 sisters and a brother. She's not them. Maggie is unique, as is each person in this room. You are uniquely yourself. Also at Maggie's core is her worth. And at her core, Maggie has worth because of who she is, not because of what she does. Now, as her grandfather, I want her to do well. I want her to do well in school. I want her to have friends. She plays hockey. I want her to win the hockey game. But Maggie's worth doesn't come from her performance at her core. It comes from just being Maggie. And the third aspect of Maggie's core is her purpose. And Maggie's purpose is to be her true self. She can admire other people, and she does. She admires my wife. She admires her grandmother. She admires other people in her life. But her job is not to be them. Her job is to be herself. Now that's true about each of us at our core, those 3 components. The green circle represents Maggie's inner life. This would be her thoughts, her beliefs, her feelings, her values, things about Maggie that you and I wouldn't know unless she shared them with me. I know some of John's inner life because over the last number of years when we've been coming to Sam's conference, John has shared that with us, some aspects of his inner life. Right? The blue circle represents Maggie's outer life, and that would be her behavior or her actions, things you would see Maggie do. You'd see her helping her mom and dad in the kitchen. You'd see her doing her homework. You'd see her practicing hockey, right? Now, everything about her that is essential is in those 3 circles. So alignment is when one flows from the other. Her core is always in alignment. She is who she is, even if she doesn't know that. She is who she is. When her thoughts, her beliefs, her feelings flow out of that, then her inner life is in alignment with her core. And when her behavior flows out of that, then her outer life is in alignment with her core. And in that experience, when that's happening, flourishing happens. Amazing happens. What's possible is possible for this child. The same thing is true for your faculty or staff. The same thing is true for our country. When our thoughts and our beliefs flow out of who we are as a people, and our behavior flows out of that, then America thrives. We're not there in 2022. Right? Now, Maggie lives in another place besides out of her core. She lives in the Loop. I grew up outside of Chicago. The Loop was inner city. I'm using Loop a little bit differently. The Loop stands for the land of other people. She lives in the land of other people. Her friends, her family, her teachers, her coach. social media. She lives in that world as well. And as she lives there, in the land of other people, she is hearing about OPE's, other people's expectations. Other people expect things from this child. She learns about other people's opinions. Other people have opinions about Maggie. And she's learning about OPA's, other people's agendas. Other people have an agenda for her. They want her to do certain things. And as she lives more and more in the loop, she comes to believe that her purpose is to please other people. Now, there's nothing wrong with pleasing other people, unless what? I want to ask you that question. Unless what?
It doesn't align.
Yes, unless you lose yourself and it doesn't align with who you truly are, all right? So pleasing other people. I think that is one of the reasons why it is so difficult for us as educators after this whole COVID thing. Because we have traditionally pleased other people. You've done so well, the kids have learned. Parents were pleased with you. Colleagues were pleased with you. Even kids were pleased with you. Every decision you make now, somebody's going to be displeased with your decision. That's why it's so difficult. So, with that in mind, here's what happens. When we live in the loop and listen to those OPOs, OPEs, and OPAs day after day after day after day, we experience amnesia. Amnesia is the major disease of the 21st century. We forget about who we are. And in that context, we are more likely to operate as a bottom 80 person. We say no to what's in our core. Why? We're not even aware of it. And we say yes to things that are in the loop. Now, there are a lot of wonderful things in the loop. You are in my loop. You are some of the wonderful things in my loop. Willow's been in my loop for 20 years. One of the wonderful things in my loop, all right? But there are also some not so wonderful things in our loop. So we say yes to those not so wonderful things in our loop when we are experiencing this. Because here's what happens. Our inner life gets out of alignment with who we are. We start having thoughts, beliefs that are not true. Like, for example, a kid who thinks they're stupid because they're confused. Confusion doesn't mean they're stupid, but they believe that. Right? And then our behavior gets out of alignment. In that context, we experience stress. Now, part of your job as an educator is to help young people discover the truth of who they are. And when they do, and we can dissolve amnesia, then those young people will live more as top 20s. They'll say yes to what's at their core because they'll know what that is. Not perfectly, not totally, because that's a lifelong process, but they'll become more aware of the truth of who they are. And they'll say no to things that are in the loop, those negative things in the loop. Again, not perfectly. But here's what we're saying. This whole notion of, I wasn't aware of this. I'm glad I know this now, to be in alignment. Where do you see your inner life and outer life in alignment with your core? And where do you see your inner life or outer life out of alignment with your core? This is not intended to be perfect. It's intended to become more aware of some things that are really, really important. Right? More important than winning the game, right? For Maggie as an example. So that's something that I wish I would have known, and it's a condition. Alignment is a condition for us to thrive. If we're going to achieve what's possible, we have to operate in alignment. And again, Willow used the word earlier, intentional. We have to be intentional about that. Not perfect, but intentional. So we're going to just ask you to finish with this. This beautiful, wise woman said, I did then what I knew how to do. Everybody operates that way. Everybody's doing what they know how to do. And then she said, now that I know better, I do better. So we have shared with you 4 things that we've become aware of. There are lots more, and there are things that you've become aware of that you wish you would have known then. Just take 2 minutes at your table and talk about what are some things that you have become aware of now that you wish you would have known then. Okay? Talk to each other, we'll call you back, and we'll close.
We invite you to turn your shoulders back up after finishing your conversations. The buzz of the room makes me know this is a topic we need to discuss. Thank you, friends, for your attention. I think that buzz, that continued buzz, by the way, that's the limitation of a speaker, is like, hour and 15, gotta get moving. Let's continue this. If you sit down next to somebody later, especially somebody you don't know, especially if they're new to Sam's, what a great intro question to say to somebody at a table. Tell me one thing that you wish you knew when you started that you now know. What an incredible way to break the ice and to sit down and let's continue these conversations. But for now, we love the idea. We spend a lot of the time, by the way, our business completely shut down when quarantine happened, because it turns out if you have a business where you gather people, that wasn't a good idea. Same with you. So we spent 6 months talking a ton about how we wanted to make sure that all the content of our work reflected our values around what was happening in the world. Paul and I spent hours upon hours on Zoom. And one of the things that we came to was this: everyone's story is important. And that's a challenge when you do what he and I do for a living, which is that we get up on stage and we're asked to talk. So we would love it if one or two of you would share one thing that you wish you knew then that you know now. But it can't be extremely long, just a paragraph, not a thesis if you can. Is there anybody in the room who would be willing to share their one thing? Your voice is just as important as everybody else's in the room. Friend, can you tell me the name that you go by? Except, I tell you this, last night you wore the most fantastic top. I don't know who you are, but I remember your shirt. It has ruffles, it's vintage, it's very cool. Your name, friend?
I have always gone by Miss Leslie.
Miss Leslie, then?
Yes.
Please share with us.
So schools always know me as Miss Leslie. A quote that I came across maybe a year ago, and I say it almost every day when somebody's verbally, upset and vomiting, like
Sure.
you said. If you are suffering, it is because you imagined things differently.
Yeah.
So when I'm upset, I can, use that quote and kind of ground me back to.
If you are suffering, it's because
You imagined things differently.
And I'm going to talk about this in my breakout later, but I think that we've all been addicted to the idea of certainty. The last 2 years has thrown certainty out the window. And I need the quote that you just said right now more than you're ever going to know, fancy shirt, Leslie. Tom, our third business partner, gave me a thing that hangs in my house that says, if I am not filled with gratitude in this moment, I'm not paying attention. And I think that's true. Thank you, Leslie. How about a 1, 2, 3 clap for Leslie? 1, 2, 3. One more, maybe this side of the room. Any friend willing to share? Yes, friend, if you could stand. Mark will see you and bring you a microphone, but could you holler out the name you like to go by? Yolanda. I'm going to say it again so Mark can get back there. Yolanda.
Hello.
What's one thing you know now that you wish you knew then?
Everybody is doing the best they can.
Yeah. Everybody is doing the best they can. 1, 2, 3.
I'm having an insight.
Okay, then you better share it.
Yeah, because you all have those things that you're thinking about. Only 2 people share it, but you all have those things. Those are probably the things we should be teaching kids in American schools, so that they don't have to wait 15, 20, 30 years or never to understand the wisdom that you have just expressed or that you're carrying in your brain. American schools have to change, and that might be one way they need to change, is by you sharing what is really important for kids to know and for each other to know. Hey, thank you so much. Have a wonderful time. We'll see you at the party tonight.
Our friend Mark is going to join us back here because he stands on the side of the stage when you're supposed to be done. So my job is to share with all of you the immense gratitude that we have as business partners. By the way, Paul and I don't work together anymore. We own a company together, but we're too busy, so we're out on the road. The only times we get to do this is when Mark invites us to come. So I have so much gratitude in my heart for you, and I have so much gratitude in my heart for you and Carol and the board, and not just what you've done for us personally, but look in the eyes of these people when they're on the dance floor tonight. You serve humanity. Thank you.
Thanks, my brother. Thank you.